More than 2,500 years ago, in the ancient land of India, a prince was born whose journey would inspire humanity for generations. His name was Siddhartha Gautama, but the world would come to know him as the Buddha, the awakened one. This is his story. A journey from luxury to renunciation, from suffering to compassion, from a prince to a teacher of peace. Siddhartha was born around 563 BCE in the beautiful gardens of Lumbini. His mother, Queen Maya, gave birth to him beneath a blooming sal tree. The king, Shuddhadana, rejoiced. Astrologers, however, gave him a prophecy. They declared, "This child will either rule as a mighty emperor or become a great spiritual teacher." The king wanted his son to be a ruler, not a wandering monk, and so he decided to shield Siddhartha from all suffering. Siddhartha grew up surrounded by unimaginable luxury. His father built palaces for each season, filled with music, feasts, and every comfort. Servants and entertainers were always present to keep the young prince happy. At the age of 16, Siddhartha married Princess Yashodhara, and soon they had a son named Rahula. To the outside world, he seemed to have everything a man could wish for: wealth, power, family, and love. But within his heart, questions began to stir. He longed to know what lay beyond the palace walls. One day, Siddhartha persuaded his charioteer, Channa, to take him outside the palace gates. What he saw that day changed his life forever. First he saw an old man, frail and bent with age. Siddhartha asked, "Does this come to all people?" Channa replied, "Yes, my prince. Aging spares no one." On another journey he saw a sick man, suffering in great pain. Again Siddhartha asked, "Can sickness strike everyone?" The answer was yes. Soon after he saw a dead body being carried to the cremation ground. His heart trembled as he realized, even the strongest and richest cannot escape death. Finally Siddhartha saw a wandering monk, calm and serene, dressed in simple robes. Unlike the others, his face was filled with peace. Channa explained, "He has renounced the world to seek truth." These four sights shook Siddhartha to his core. He understood that wealth and pleasure could not protect him from suffering. There had to be a deeper meaning to life. At the age of 29, Siddhartha stood at a crossroads between two destinies. In the palace, his wife Yashodhara and their infant son Rahula slept peacefully, unaware of the storm within his heart. The prince gazed at them one last time, tears forming in his eyes. "If I stay," he thought, "I will be king, but the world's suffering will remain. If I leave, I may find the truth that frees not only me, but all of humanity." Silently he kissed his son's forehead and whispered, "Forgive me, little one. One day you will understand." Under the cover of night, he mounted his faithful horse, Kantaka. The hooves struck the earth, but legend says the gods muffled the sound, so the palace would not awaken. At the edge of the forest, Siddhartha dismounted. With steady hands, he removed his jeweled ornaments and set aside his golden crown. Drawing a blade, he cut off his long, royal hair, letting it fall to the ground like his past life itself. Clothed now in a simple robe, barefoot and unarmed, he handed his ornaments to Channa, his charioteer, and said, "Take these back to my father. Tell him his son is no longer a prince. I go in search of truth." That night, Siddhartha Gautama, once heir to a throne, walked into the wilderness, leaving behind luxury, power, and family. From that moment he was no longer a prince. He was a seeker, a wanderer, a man on the path to enlightenment. For 6 long years Siddhartha wandered the forests of India in search of truth. He sought out wise teachers, learned ancient philosophies, and practiced meditation so deep that he could still his breath and heartbeat. Yet the answers he longed for did not come. Determined, he turned to the path of extreme austerity. Alongside 5 other ascetics, he starved himself, reducing his meals to a single grain of rice a day. His body withered. His ribs pressed against his skin. His eyes sank deep into their sockets, and his flesh clung tightly to his bones. The villagers who saw him whispered, "Is he even alive, or just a ghost clinging to breath?" But Siddhartha thought, "If the truth is found through suffering, then I will endure until the very end." Yet even as he pushed his body to the brink of death, wisdom remained distant. His mind grew faint, his strength nearly gone. One evening, as he tried to rise, his frail body collapsed onto the ground. Lying there in the dust, he realized with clarity, this is not the way. To torture the body is as futile as indulging it. Both are chains that bind the soul. At that moment, a village girl named Sujata saw him and offered him a bowl of sweet rice milk. Siddhartha accepted it with gratitude. As the warm food touched his lips, strength returned to his body. His 5 companions, however, saw this and turned away in disappointment. They whispered, "The prince has failed. He has abandoned the path," and they left him. But Siddhartha knew the truth. Neither luxury nor self-torture could bring liberation. The path to awakening must lie between these 2 extremes. This was the birth of the middle way, a path of balance, wisdom, and compassion. After years of searching, wandering, and suffering, Siddhartha arrived at a quiet grove in Bodh Gaya. There stood a great Bodhi tree, its branches stretching wide like protective arms. Siddhartha sat beneath its shade, crossing his legs in deep resolve. His mind was steady, his heart unshaken. He whispered to himself, "Here I will sit. I will not rise until I have found the truth, even if my flesh withers and my bones turn to dust." As night fell, the air grew heavy. Sensing his determination, Mara, the Lord of Illusion, descended. With thunder in the sky and shadows rising, Mara tried to break Siddhartha's resolve. He sent forth visions of fear. Armies of demons with flaming weapons charged at the meditating sage. But Siddhartha remained still, his eyes closed in peace. The weapons turned to flowers before they could reach him. Then Mara whispered temptations. He conjured images of gold, palaces, and pleasures. He sent forth his own daughters, dancing in beauty, their voices sweet as honey. But Siddhartha did not move. His mind was unshaken, like a mountain in a storm. Finally Mara challenged him. "Who are you to claim enlightenment? What witness do you have?" In that moment Siddhartha opened his eyes. Calmly he stretched his hand downward, touching the earth itself. "The earth is my witness." And the earth trembled. The sky grew clear. Mara and his illusions vanished. As the long night ended, a silence filled the grove. The morning star rose in the eastern sky, and with it, Siddhartha's mind opened fully. He saw the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, the chain of suffering that binds all beings, and he saw the way to break it. In that instant Siddhartha awakened. He had discovered the truth. He was no longer just a seeker. He was the Buddha, the awakened one. Days after his awakening, the Buddha walked to the deer park at Sarnath, where 5 ascetics, his former companions, were living. These men had once abandoned him, believing he had failed. When they saw him approaching, they whispered among themselves, "Here comes Siddhartha, the one who broke his vow. We will not rise for him, we will not greet him." But as he drew closer, something in his presence stirred their hearts. His face glowed with serenity, his steps were steady, and his eyes shone with boundless compassion. And despite themselves, they stood and welcomed him. The Buddha sat before them and began to speak. His voice was calm, yet filled with power that seemed to echo beyond time itself. "Monks," he said, "there are 2 extremes one must avoid. Indulgence in pleasure, which is base and useless, and self-torture, which is painful and fruitless. The path I have found is the middle way, a path of balance, wisdom, and freedom." The ascetics leaned closer, listening with rapt attention, as the Buddha revealed his profound realization. The 4 noble truths. "First," he said, "life is filled with suffering. Birth, sickness, aging, and death touch us all. Second, this suffering has a cause, craving and attachment. Third, suffering can end. Freedom is possible. And fourth, there is a path that leads to the end of suffering, the Noble Eightfold Path. Right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration." As the Buddha spoke, it was as though the world itself became still. The deer grazed quietly nearby. The wind softened. The monks felt as if a great wheel had begun to turn. This moment became known as the Dharmachakra Pravartana, the turning of the wheel of Dharma. One by one, the 5 ascetics felt their hearts awaken. Doubt faded. Faith grew. They bowed before the Buddha, no longer seeing him as Siddhartha the seeker, but as the teacher of truth. From that day on, the Sangha, the community of monks, was born, and the Buddha's teachings began to spread, carrying light into a world of darkness. For the next 45 years, the Buddha walked barefoot across the dusty roads of India. He did not carry gold, weapons, or an army. His only possessions were a simple robe, a begging bowl, and the radiance of his wisdom. Wherever he went, people gathered. Some were kings in jeweled crowns, some were farmers with dirt on their hands, some were beggars with empty stomachs. To all of them, the Buddha spoke with the same compassion. He taught that caste and birth do not define a person, but their actions, their kindness, and their wisdom. He reminded people, hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal law. In great cities, powerful rulers bowed before him. In humble villages, poor families offered him rice with trembling hands. To children he was gentle, telling them stories of animals and past lives. To the grieving he offered comfort. To the arrogant he offered truth. His words were simple, but they carried the weight of eternity. As disciples gathered, the Buddha formed the Sangha, a community of monks and nuns who carried his teachings far and wide. They traveled to forests and villages, spreading the Dharma, the truth of compassion, balance, and liberation. His teachings spread across kingdoms, carried not by force, but by the quiet strength of wisdom. The Buddha's presence transformed lives. Murderers laid down their weapons. The proud bowed their heads in humility. The suffering found peace. In every corner of the land, the wheel of Dharma continued to turn, bringing light into the darkest places. And even today, there are stories from his life that continue to inspire us. Stories of compassion, wisdom, and the power of truth. One such story is of Angulimala, a feared murderer who wore a garland of fingers around his neck. When he came upon the Buddha, ready to kill, he was stopped not by force, but by the Buddha's calm presence and boundless compassion. Angulimala laid down his weapon, and in that moment he was transformed. From a killer, he became a devoted monk. Another story tells of an angry man who insulted the Buddha with harsh words. The Buddha listened silently and then asked, "If someone offers you a gift and you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man realized that his anger, unaccepted, remained his own burden to carry. Then there is the story of Siddhartha Gautama, a grieving mother who begged the Buddha to bring her dead child back to life. The Buddha told her to bring a mustard seed from a house untouched by death. She searched everywhere, but found that every family had suffered loss. With this realization, she found peace, understanding that death is a part of life. And finally, the Buddha once pointed to a pond of muddy water. He asked his disciple to fetch him a drink. The disciple refused, saying the water was too dirty. But when the Buddha asked again after some time, the water had settled and become clear. The Buddha said, "Just as muddy water clears when left undisturbed, so too does the mind become pure when we let it rest in stillness." These timeless stories remind us that the Buddha's wisdom is not distant history. It is a living light, guiding us even today. At the age of 80, after a lifetime of walking, teaching, and spreading compassion, the Buddha felt his body growing weak. While traveling with his disciples, he arrived at Kushinagar. There, beneath two great sal trees, he lay down on his right side, resting his head upon his hand. The trees bloomed out of season, their blossoms gently falling like a final offering. The sky turned golden, and a deep silence filled the grove. Word spread quickly, and soon monks, kings, villagers, and ordinary people gathered around him. Many wept openly, unable to imagine a world without their teacher. Ananda, his devoted disciple, fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "Master," he cried, "what are we to do without you?" The Buddha looked at him with calm, steady eyes and spoke softly. "Ananda, do not grieve. All things are impermanent. Work diligently for your own liberation." He turned to the gathering one last time and said, "Remember, my teachings are your guide. I am only a lamp. Walk the path and you will find your way." With those words he closed his eyes. His breath slowed, his body grew still, and with a serene smile the Buddha passed into Parinirvana, the final liberation beyond birth and death, beyond all suffering. The earth trembled, and the hearts of his disciples broke. Yet as the sal blossoms drifted down, they understood. Their teacher had not left them. His wisdom lived on, in their minds and their hearts, and in the Dharma that would shine for ages to come. From that quiet grove in Kushinagar, the message of the Buddha spread across the world, a message of compassion, wisdom, and peace. From India, the Dharma crossed the seas, to Sri Lanka, where it took root and flourished, becoming a guiding light for generations. It traveled along the Silk Roads into Central Asia and blossomed in China, where new schools and traditions emerged. From there, it spread to Korea and Japan, shaping cultures, art, and philosophy. In the north, the teachings reached Tibet and Mongolia, weaving deeply into the lives of entire people, with profound devotion and practice. Thus what began with 5 ascetics in a deer park grew into a path followed by millions, carrying the light of awakening across kingdoms, across cultures, and across centuries. The legacy of the Buddha still shines brightly in our world today, Even after centuries, the Buddha's path continues to remind humanity that peace is not something to be found, it is something to be realized. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.